water, fire, air, ether, mind, and understanding, which is the intellect, and self-sense, which is the ego. This is the eightfold division of my nature. In these two verses, this and the next verse, God explains metaphysics, shows us his totality. In verse 4, Shri Krishna shows that the five elements, which are earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the mind, the intellect, and the ego, are the eightfold division of his nature. Nature is of two types, as Shri Krishna explains in this chapter. Nature is of two types. One is apara, which is lower or material, and the second is para, higher or consciousness. If we have to explain it in simple language, then apara is material nature and para is conscious nature. The material world is made up of material nature, and the material world runs and functions because of conscious nature. Both of these are needed. Material nature is needed and conscious nature is needed. The apara, material nature, that Shri Krishna is explaining in verse 4 has earth, bhumir, as the first item on the list, and the ego as the last item of the list. Why is this? What trend do you see as you go along the list? The more you go forward through this list, then the more subtle and the more specific that each item becomes. In existence, the most solid element is earth, and that is why Shri Krishna has mentioned it first on this list. Even more subtle than earth is water. Vedantis say that the only reason why water can stay on the earth is because water is more subtle than earth. Water stays in the ground. If you pour water on earth, then it goes towards the ground. The reason why it goes there is because if it did not go there, then the earth would rise. If there is 2 meters of wood, then if you hammer a 2 centimeters nail into it, then the wood does not become 2 centimeters bigger. This is because the wood has less density and therefore space for the nail to fit in. In the same way, this earth is made of matter, but the elements that are subtler than it can go inside it. If you put a solid object on the earth, then it will just stay as the earth, on the earth, and it will not go inside the earth. The earth cannot fit solid matter inside it. No matter how much you push the solid object against the earth, it will stay there and it will not go underneath the earth. But what does go underneath the earth? Water does go underneath the earth, and this means that the element of water is more subtle than the element of earth. The third element that Shri Krishna mentions in this list in verse 4 is fire. Fire is even more subtle than earth and more subtle than water. Next on the list is air. Air is even more subtle than fire and can therefore go through fire. Air can even go through water. It is because air can go into water that the fishes and other creatures in the water can live. Oxygen is needed for life to remain there. The oxygen that has dissolved in the water is there because of the creatures and the plants in the water. The only reason why the plants in the water can survive is because there is air in the water. The nitrogen and oxygen in the water come from the air that has gone inside the water. The only reason why air can go inside the water is because air is more subtle than the water. Otherwise the air would not be able to go inside the water. Then there is ether, which is even more subtle than air. Ether is the subtlest of the 5 elements. Even if there is nothing, then there will still be ether. And everything can be in ether. Ether is more subtle and more subtler than ether, and it is the mind. Even more subtle than the mind is the intellect, and the most subtlest matter on the list is the ego. Each of the items in the list are more and more subtle, but the ego is so subtle that it's difficult to be free from it. Very difficult. It is very difficult to go beyond the ego, and it is the most difficult of all. If we look at this in another meaning, then the process of creation is forever taking place in this world. In this creation, there are 2 activities. What are these activities? They are to manifest and to evolve. All things that are manifest and manufactured are apara, matter. All things that evolve are para, consciousness. All the 8 items listed in verse 4 become manifest, and everything that evolves is consciousness. This is the difference between matter and consciousness. We say that human beings are consciousness deep inside, but the majority of human beings are becoming like matter. The reason for this is that their truth, their consciousness, and their uniqueness does not last in them. This is because human beings have even been manufactured. If you take an article or an object, then it will say made in India, made in Japan, made in USA, or made in Germany, etc. But now even human beings have had these labels of made in India, made in Japan, made in USA, made in Germany. This is because he arrived in the environment, his culture, his traditions, and all of this gave him his thoughts. Not only that, but people create so many made in labels. Before there was made in India, but now it is made in a Hindu family, made in a Jain family, made in a Buddhist family, made in a Christian family, made in a Muslim family. There's no problem until you have made in the Hindu family, but now there is made in a Vaishnav family, made in a Shaivat family. How far will we take these labels? How much have we broken human beings down into groups? People are not ready to leave these labels. Regarding things that evolve, let us take the example of the consciousness inside a small child. The small child is labeled made in India. The child is a child, the child is consciousness. And the more that this made in becomes widespread in consciousness, then the more that human beings turn towards matter. This is because these things take us towards what is manifested. We do not even know this, but the things around us take us, who have evolved, towards things that have become manifest. Only one activity is taking place in our whole lives, that we are manufactured and never finished. If a good is manufactured and finished after 16 years, then it's fine, but we are never finished. The polishing on us never finishes. We are evolved and not manifested. Manufacturing is an unoriginal activity, whereas evolving is an original activity. This is because the Supreme Soul is our creator and he is original. Even in the material elements, God does reside in them, but you have to search for the Supreme Soul in them. God is in the earth. That is why there is a lot to learn from the earth. The ultimate truth that we can learn from the earth is endurance. The word for earth in Sanskrit, Prithvi, is Sarvam Saha, meaning that which endures everything. There is nothing in existence that is useless. And one who wishes to go beyond existence must learn something from each of these 5 elements. The earth teaches us to endure. If someone even steps on our foot, then we say to them, are you not looking? How many feet step on the earth each day? The earth endures all of this. If we get even touched by a tool, then we start screaming. But when a farmer is farming, then he completely digs all over the earth, and yet when he plants once, then this earth gives him back 1,000 crops. We can learn 2 things from water. The first is cleanliness, and the second is coolness. If someone wishes to cleanse other people, then he must cleanse himself first. This is what we learn from water. If there are stains on a piece of clothing, then we use clear water to wash it. Clear water can clean dirty clothes and take away their stains. Therefore, practice before you preach. This is what water teaches us. There is a very famous quote of Gandhiji, "My life is my message." This is what water teaches, cleanliness. The second quality of water is coolness. When we reach home after a tiring day and drink 2 or 3 glasses of cold water, then we become so fresh. Bhagavad Gita says, Shita Sparshaha Dhyapaha. The quality of water is coolness. Water is not warm, you have to make water warm. If you are making water warm and then you stop making it warm by switching off the gas, then the water becomes cool again. This is the nature and the quality of water. What is our nature like? The nature of people is that of getting angry. We're always so hot and only cool some of the time. And I often give the example that if you feel like getting angry, then you can only get angry when you need to. When musicians such as tabla, Indian drum players, are performing during the show, then they prepare the tabla by pulling it fast and tight. This is called winding the tabla up. They pull the string with a handkerchief and then bang the hammer into it. Then the tabla plays properly. But as soon as the show is finished, then they wind the tabla down. Therefore, they wind up the tabla only when it is necessary, and when the show finishes, then they wind the tabla down. Only then does the tabla last for a long time. What happens to us is that our tabla is wound up 24 hours a day, so all we hear is this hammer banging all the time. Our tabla is never wound down, and because it never winds down, it does not last very long. Even our relations do not last for very long when we're wound up for 24 hours a day. Our tabla is just wound up. We must learn to wind it down. Coolness should be the nature of human beings. This is how you recognize great saints. Just like a person that is tired after the day experiences coolness by drinking cold water, in the same way, when a person who is tired of life sits by a great saint for 2 to 3 hours, then he attains peace. It is because of his peaceful nature that we can call him a saint. This is the characteristic of a saint. If a person takes his sorrows to a common person and comes back with his sorrows doubled, but when the person goes to a saint, then he forgets his sorrows and he gets peace of mind. Coolness is a quality of water. Existence teaches us all of these things. Fire, air and ether also have other qualities, and the Guruji always talks about them during the Srimad Bhagavad discourses. Next, the quality of fire, firstly, is that it always rises. It always goes upwards. If you light a match, the flame will go upwards and will never go downwards. In the same way, life should always go in upwards direction. We have to learn from fire that we should never go downwards in life. We should keep progressing, advancing and developing. The graph should keep getting higher and higher and higher. Secondly, fire is something that purifies. If there are stains in golden jewelry and you wish to turn it to 24 karat gold, then you take it to the goldsmiths, and the goldsmith will first put it into fire. Because of this, all the impurities in the gold will go away and the jewelry will come out at 24 karat gold. What human beings have to learn from fire is that if there are any faults in their lives, then they should go to God and ask Him to make these faults go away and make their lives 24 karat gold. That is why we have yagnas and why we have oblations, the fire sacrifices. This fire is there to get rid of faults, egotism, etc. That is the reason why we have the penances of yagnas. We have tell Agni Narayan, which is the God residing in the fire, that Lord, by sitting by you, we're sitting by you so all these faults can go away. Third, fire is free. You cannot tie fire up. If you try to tie fire up with ropes, then the ropes will get burnt. Fire is completely free. Although fire is free, it is not out of control, because after burning what it needs to burn, it becomes calm. This is a very great quality of fire. Whatever a human being takes for himself and whatever material interests he has, after enjoying these things, he should remain calm. Fire does not go in search of more and more things. As soon as you get an oblation, then it calms down. This is the element of fire. Next, air. Air is all-pervading. Air goes everywhere. Air can pass through a rubbish heap or a garden. It is fine for a little while, but then air then leaves behind the good smell of the garden, but also the bad smell of the rubbish heap, and moves on. Whoever wants to be great in life must learn this from the air. The more you start to come forward in life, then you get both good smells and bad smells from society. So many people in society will praise you, and praise is like the good smell of the beautiful garden. Some people will always also criticize you. Even if there is no reason, they will still criticize you, because society is very interested in criticizing people. That is what they do. 8 out of 10 people will praise you and will say that you have done well, whereas the remaining 2 people will say, it is all well, but they only have an interest in that but. They try to search out this but we have nothing like that, and yet they still try to search for it. The air teaches you to leave it and move on. In the 12th chapter of the Gita, Shri Krishna will say, Tulya Nindastuti. A quality of an ideal devotee is be even-minded in praise and blame, because you cannot please everybody all the time. This is a principle of society. If you try to please everyone in society, then you will lose yourself. You will fall into the activity of seeing whether people will like it before you perform any action. Tunde matiri bina. Each and every person has different thoughts and different interests. This will not last, and you will not have a support for it. You will not be able to create your own identity, because everyone would have to be pleased. And I often say that if you try to please everyone, then the clothes you make does not become well fitted, because the cloth you make doesn't become well fitted, because it's a long piece of cloth. A long piece of cloth is suitable for everyone. You do not need any fitting for it. Anyone can wear it, be it big, small, fat, skinny, tall, short. Everyone can wear it. You have to decide. Do you want to be a master tailor who creates a perfect fitting, or do you want to create a long piece of cloth that will be suitable for everyone? A person should not run after making everyone happy, and at the same time, the person should not run away from criticism. This is what we learn from air. With regard to the 5th element, ether, everyone thinks that the ether is theirs. The ether goes inside the palace of a king, but also in the hut of a poor person. Every human being should be like this and see everyone as his own. The ether covers everyone. Scientists say that the ether is a filter, and if there was no ether, then nothing could be done. How does one person's words reach another person's ears? How do words go from one person's mouth to another person's ears? The ether is a medium for this. A person should be like a bridge for everyone. This is the quality of the ether. Today, words reach people's ears, but nobody registers them because the ether does not remain anymore. The significance of ether to people has gone. A father tells the son 10 times a day to do this and do that, yet the son does not listen because the significance of ether to people has gone away. The words come out of the father's mouth like wishes, but they do not reach the son's ears because the significance of the ether has gone away from people's lives. Ether is necessary in life. The rest of the items labeled by Sri Krishna, listed by Sri Krishna in this verse, 4 are mind, intellect and ego. What is ego? Sri Krishna says in verse 5 that this is his lower nature and the material body is created through this. This lower nature because of the ego. The scriptures say that ego is of two types. The first type of ego is the ego that gets its support from mindness. The more that this mindness, for example, what is mine, increases, then the bigger that the ego gets. The ego is of the apara, lower nature or material nature. This ego is matter. This list of my keeps increasing. For example, when you say my beauty, then this ego keeps increasing. Then when you say my wealth, then this ego becomes even bigger. When you say my mansion, then the ego gets even bigger. Then when you say my power, and it gets yet more even bigger. Then my fame, and it keeps increasing. The more things that get the support from this mindness, then the bigger that the ego becomes. But there is another ego that is called the pure ego. What is this pure ego? A person does not always get support from this mindness. This is pure existence because life is not possible without the ego. The Sanskrit word from ego is ahamkar. Out of this, aham, if you split the word, means me, and kar means ness. So therefore literally ahamkar means minus. As soon as this me comes, then egotism begins. We keep hearing that we should remove this ego, get rid of this ego, but the ego can only be removed when the person dies. Otherwise it is not even going to come out. It is impossible to get rid of the ego. The ego is not an appendix that you can just do an operation and take it out. This I am is the reason why life begins. If this me was not there, then there would be no life. The only reason why life is enjoyable is because of me. If there was no me, then there would be no enjoyment in life. Because of the I am, there is progress in life. If there was no I am, then there would be no progress in life. I am poor, and therefore I want to be rich. Where does this progress come from? It comes from the I am. And when the I comes, then the ego begins. I am ignorant, and I want to become wise. Where did this progress come from? It only came because the I remained. George Bernard Shaw was once asked that, in your opinion, who is the greatest person in the world? Guess what Shaw replied? He said, it is me. The person asking the question found this strange and thought, what an egotistical person that he considers himself the greatest person in the world. The person asking the question said, there are so many great personalities in the world at the time, such as Gandhiji, Lenin, Lincoln, Tolstoy, Rousseau, and many others. There are so many great personalities and thinkers in the world. Who is number one? George Bernard Shaw said that Gandhi, Lenin, Lincoln, Tolstoy, Rousseau are definitely great personalities, but they are number two. I myself am number one. The person asking the question asked, why do you think that? Shaw replied, if I was not there, there would be no Gandhi, no Lenin, no Lincoln, no Tolstoy, no Rousseau. There would be nobody. When do all of these people come? Only when I am there. Therefore, number one great personality is me, and everyone else is number two. George Bernard Shaw was a humorist and a satirist, and his whole way of explaining things was completely different. He would say things very subtly. Scriptures give us a very nice example to explain what this pure ego is. They explain what the me is, that it's the me that does not depend on this mindness. The scriptures say, imagine that you have gone to sleep at night, and in your dreams, you've had a bad nightmare. You are passing through a jungle, and a lion is behind you chasing you. You are run away, the lion is chasing after you. You are so tired, yet you're still running because it is a question of life and death. You keep running and running, and you think that this lion's paw is about to reach you. As soon as the lion's paw is into you, then you let out a big scream and wake up. When this happens, then what is the first pleasure that you get? What is it? What's the first pleasure that you get? I exist. What is this I exist, which is the first pleasure you get on waking up and which gives you a sigh of relief? This is the pleasure in just existing. At this time, you do not think that I am wearing these clothes, I am in my bungalow, I am my wife's, I have such a big business. None of these thoughts come because your pleasure is that I exist and that is all. At that moment, you have the biggest satisfaction. This is called the pure ego. In this pure ego, there is no sense of minus. The more this ego is filled with my, then the more that this ego becomes polluted. I exist. This is not enough. When one reaches a state where he is just this pure ego, then this means that he can live even without this list of my. Such a person can live without anything being his and just gets bliss because of the fact that he exists. Western thinkers use slightly different words for this: being and becoming. Being and becoming. In our lives, all activities are out of this becoming. We're always trying to become something. When we run after becoming, then we forget the being. When we do not even remember this being. I want to become a leader, I want to become a millionaire, etc. You want to become something. True bliss is in being and not in becoming. This is because no matter how much becoming there is, it is still incomplete in the end. In becoming, you get past one milestone and see another milestone in distance, and you cannot go without aiming for the next milestone. On the other hand, in being, you are complete where you are. Therefore, one ego is of being and the other ego is of becoming. The ego of becoming is apara, lower nature of matter. Therefore, you see that the more the person has this ego of becoming, then the more materialistic he becomes. If a person thinks that he will be well regarded if he becomes rich and he runs off money, then he becomes materialistic after money. If a person's ego increases, if he gets more power, then this person runs off the power and he becomes more materialistic after power. No family and no relations remain for such a person. He does not see anything else apart from power. This is the materialist ego, and if a person chases after matter, then he'll become materialistic himself. The pure ego is about being. A saint had performed very good penances for years. God became happy. God told him, the good penances that you have performed for a number of years have reached me and I'm happy. Ask me for a boon and you shall get it. What would you like? The saint said, God, I do not want anything. God said, it cannot work that you do not want anything. You have performed so many penances and I'm happy. I'm saying this myself that you shall get whatever you like. Ask for something. The saint said, God, I do not want anything. You have blessed me with your vision, your divine vision, and this is more than enough. God began making offers himself. God said, look, this is my sword. If you take this sword, then you will never be defeated in life. You will be able to win over the world. The saint said, God, if you are ready to give away this sword, then this means that you do not need this sword. You do not need it, and you are giving it to me, but I do not want it. If it was worth giving, then you would not give it to me. You are giving it to me because it is not worth keeping, and I therefore do not want it. God said, it's not like that. I'm happy with you, and that's why I'm giving it to you. The saint said, no, God, because I am yours, the whole world has become mine. The world will not become mine if I win over it with a sword, but because I'm yours, the whole world will become mine. This is because I found out that this whole world is yours. I'm yours, therefore the whole world is mine. God said, okay, just get this ring of mine. If you wear this ring, then all the wealth in the world become yours. The saint said, God, do not put me into these difficulties. I am fine how I am. I do not need it. God gave the saint a very long list, and the saint kept saying no, no, no. God offered the saint extremely beautiful woman who would always remain young and beautiful. The saint said, they remain young, but I will grow old, so why would I need them? I don't want them. In the end, God insisted and said, I am offering you many things, and you don't want any of them, so come to my palace and take whatever you like. The saint went to God's palace and took a bunch of roses. The saint said, God, if you insist, then give me this bunch of roses. God said, what will you do with this bunch of roses? One rose will grow in the morning, and at night it will wilt. It's not permanent. Why do you wish to have this? The saint said, Lord, everything you've offered me is not permanent, and therefore I have asked for this bunch of roses so I can always remember the temporary nature of life. Every morning the roses will bloom, and at evening they will wilt. When I see this, then I'll remember that the life we have will also wilt, and this life will also finish. If you gave me any of these other things that you offered, then my egotism would grow straight away. If I had victory of the world, all the wealth of the world, or beautiful women, then all of these things would add on to my ego. But this bunch of roses that I will take will remind me every day that this life will wilt, and at the same time I will not become sad because of this every day, because as the roses bloom, give everyone a nice fragrance, then they wilt. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in life. I'll bloom, I'll give my fragrance to the world, and then I will wilt. Let us go to the 5th verse.